Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.
Hello and welcome to the COO Collective, a thought leadership series brought to you by Forbes India in association with ServiceNow. I'm your host, Paramita Chatterjee. Now, our topic for discussion today is operational excellence, optimizing people, processes, and assets. And how do companies deliver on those goals, even as they need to deliver on higher earnings, a larger market share, or launch a new product or service? In fact, today's success for companies has been redefined because they also need to be able to communicate to stakeholders their commitment to environmental, social, and governance initiatives or ESG goals. And how does that tie in with operational excellence? Because companies need to be resilient, agile, and flexible while running their businesses efficiently in today's world. To answer some of those questions, we have with us an esteemed lineup of panelists, starting with Sameer Bendre, Chief of Operations at Persistent Systems Limited, Arjun Vaidyanathan, COO at KPMG, Harsh Parekh, Co-founder, Ascent Health and Wellness Solutions Private Limited, Nayuza Dalal, Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Connect Business Solutions, and Akash Desai, Senior Manager, Solution Consulting at ServiceNow. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion and really for helping us understand how companies can really achieve and deliver on operational excellence. And let me start with you, Arjun, in terms of how you would define operational excellence, because the traditional sort of viewpoint was that when we spoke about operational excellence and optimization, the focus used to be on controlling costs, for instance. I mean, how would you define it in today's digitally transformed world?
Thanks for that question, and quite interesting topic that you have chosen, because many a times people don't actually focus on operations as they focus on probably other parts of the business on many areas. What I would really answer to that particular question is today, okay. Operations have become actually the core nerve center of a lot of the decision making that an organization makes, okay, especially after COVID, because during COVID time, this operational team actually came into real fore in terms of actually maintaining and managing the business while we had very little clue about what's going to happen on ground, okay. uh, in that scenario, from there to move currently into a normalized business, what all of us have learned is that digital is going to be the way forward. So what has happened right now is that most organizations are questioning the very basic processes which they have in the system, whether it is people like us internally who are managing a lot of processes, even from a customer's point of view, they are also focusing on how can we speed up things, how can I make decision making more faster and actually more relevant at this point in time. So under those circumstances, I would say things have actually moved quite a bit, and operations has taken a very center stage in forms of decision making, not only from a technology point of view, but even from how do we actually service our customers, how do we actually service our internal customers. And for many of us, internal customers are far more difficult in many reasons. So currently, if I look at it from an external customer point of view, people are really looking at digital transformation. They are looking at not just, I would say, trying to get the cost better off or trying to do something more cheaper. While the cost is a big consideration from spending and technology and what can be done, etc., more importantly is faster access to the market, faster delivery to the customer, and actually getting more relevant decision making both internally and from a customer point of view. I think that is the focus. Now, to that extent, if I need to, or if some organization needs to spend money on it to make it all happen, I think that's the focus right now. Of course, the cost benefit analysis, etc., always comes into play. And people do talk about.
So clearly the framework has been redefined when it comes to operational excellence. And Sameer Bendre, I'm coming to you here. When we redefine the framework, and again, Arjun brought up some key points. Digital transformation, cost still remains a very important aspect. Agility and the ability to make relevant decision making. But one of the aspects I was reading about is a very crucial component to achieve all of this is really creating a holistic environment where all parts of the company sort of come together, those silos that exist, and really work together towards this common goal. So how can really that be achieved in today's context?
So first of all, I think a very important topic which you have chosen, the whole operation excellence, because I think the context certainly has changed. See, when you look at today's organization, you have to look at it in two fashions. One is a standard organization structure which you have where you have. But if you really want a context, you need to look at a sort of a web type organizations where people are coming together to really solve these problems, looking at different problems and how do we solve them. That's the context which in the new world which we'll look at, whether it will look at the people, processes, resources, or more importantly, time, because time is one of the most valuable things which is going to be a play in all these things. So that's the newer context which we will have to look at all the operational processes and how do you define them with that. And that would be, in my opinion, really a key to look at it. Yes, technology is there, whether it is digital data driven, looking at new tools, looking at digital transformation, these things are going to play a role. But the overall looking at it not in a rigid framework, but a much more flexible framework with sort of pods coming together would be a focus, in my opinion, to look at some of these things.
Indeed. And Nazar Dalal, you are here representing Connect Business Solutions, which is part of Quest Corp, and you actually help companies in that transformation journey. But it seems to be a sort of almost an overnight and sort of complete overhaul of the way companies have traditionally been conducting business. I mean, how do you typically advise your clients, for instance, to really embark on the journey? What piece of sort of this big pie should they start off with first?
We are India's largest domestic BPO operations, which covers both, the traditional operations as also digitally enabled operations. And our key customer offerings are, how do we enhance revenues of our customers? How do we continue to enable efficiencies, and how do we enhance the customer experience, the end customer experience? So clearly, whilst one of my co-panelists mentioned about, the costs and the focus on costs, yes, that continues, but I think clearly and also accelerated, by COVID, and we'll talk a little later in the session on that. The clear movement has been, an accelerated movement from being a cost, our operations, so customer service operations, back office operations have moved from being a cost center to being a value enabler, to being a revenue enabler, particularly where we do a lot of work on cross-sell, upsell. So that's a trend which we have seen, where we enable our customers, to complete their broken customer journeys. If it's a web or a digitally enabled sale, to sort of, call leads, sort of, and convert them into warm leads and sort of ensure sales. So the whole focus on how do we enable our customers to enhance their revenues is a very, very key component, in terms of what we do, and a key shift from being a cost center to a revenue center. The other area where, we have also seen a significant movement is how do we enable, the end customer metric, because ultimately, again, the contact center is a channel for our customers, end customers, to reach out to us. Yeah. So how do we give them a seamless experience? How do we use that channel, again, as I mentioned, to cross-sell, upsell, or even if we don't do that, just to sort of enhance positive customer experience? Yeah, because whether you call it NPS or whether you call it CSAT, that's another important metric, which we sort of work with our customers, to manage, because a happy customer, is a repeat customer, as we know, and it's infinitely cheaper to cross-sell to an existing customer than to acquire a new customer. And that's the second piece, which we sort of, and enable and work with our customers. And of course, as I mentioned, the underlying cost optimization, enabling efficiencies, value adds and innovation, that really continues to be the sort of base pillar. But clearly, the world has moved on from looking only at that to looking at value addition in terms of enhancing revenues and enhancing end customer experience.
Right. So these are clearly, some of the metrics which are very important. So end customer experience and all of that is, of course, tied to, a collaborative workforce as well, which is very much a key part of operational excellence and optimizing on the same. Harsh, as a startup which has had a fairly meteoric rise, I mean, your present is Farm Easy in the B2C space. You also have a fairly large presence in the B2B space. How did you embark upon this journey? Did you prioritize, customer experience when it came to building operational efficiencies, and how did the two sort of work together?
I think, look, this really fits in our journey, right? If you look at the problem we were trying to solve for, we said, how do I deliver medicines to my end consumers in the fastest and the best possible way? And when we started doing that, we initially, I think, went through various models. But today, when we look at, we've created a network of 1 lakh plus retailers, and to ensure that the entire operations is run completely digital, right? So as soon as the order comes in, be it in our B2B, any of our businesses, it's completely digital, because I think the consumer today wants complete clarity. I don't think so. It is any longer an option for any business. The consumer expects that he should know what is the SLAs anyone is committing, be it in any industry. I think that is now table stakes. And to build that, it's easier to say it's consumer experience. You can't create that experience without having the operational capabilities. A lot of in our journey, I think we've built it in-house, built it on the go, learned from the various mistakes, and just being there, right? Something as simple as what we launched, I think 1 month back, where we are saying, phlebotomist coming to your home, he will come on time. Now, that's a great consumer experience, but for that to play out, it has to be a 99.9% SLA commitment. So the entire operations team has to be aligned to deliver that experience. It's easy to go and make a promise, because today, I don't think so anyone in the country, in any industry, and especially healthcare, where the expectations are high. So I think it's boiling down that any promise, any consumer experience you cannot make without ensuring the building blocks are made. And for that, having an integrated ecosystem, I think, is absolutely the key.
Integrated ecosystem. And that's the question I'm going to come to Akash Desai from ServiceNow, because it seems to be an increasingly complex world and a complex environment to navigate for companies. If you throw in all the myriad technology solutions, whether they're learning on the go or, sort of rehauling their entire processes at one go, at ServiceNow, one of your mission statements is to really reduce complexity and to help the workforce really work in that optimum manner. What are those learnings, or what would be your pieces of advice to companies as they try and focus on operational excellence while trying to ensure that the complexity doesn't go out of hand?
Absolutely, Paramita. And I will reiterate the mission statement, right? We are into, making the world of work better for people. So that's our mission statement. And what we have observed across all the customers, across industry verticals, take it banking or BFSI, retail, manufacturing, telecom, any customer today, they have inherited a lot of technical debt, okay, over a period of time. And nothing wrong. That is how things used to be then. Those technologies were best at that point in time. But eventually what has happened is we have created a lot of silos within the organization. So an organization where, operations is, as everybody on this call is reiterating, operation is key for a great customer experience, for revenue generation, for having that competitive edge. Or operation excellence is the key. The operations cut across multiple functions, be it HR, finance, legal, your customer service, your production, or distribution, vendor management, across all of this. And we have separate siloed systems. And that is where actually the problem is. The problem is there today. The processes, they cut across the siloed systems, and that's where the ball drops. The handovers are always manual. It's over an email, it's over a phone call. So you don't have a single connected experience for the employees. And that is what is introducing a lot of delay and inefficiency in the operations. Now, most of the organizations, what they are looking for, they are looking for a single system of engagement for the employee. which will integrate with their existing system of record. So you don't have to throw away their existing investments, but you create a layer on top of that, which gives a unified consumer grade experience to employees, and they are able to serve their operations and their customers much better. And I would just like to add a point here, like what Forrester says, a happy employee leads to a happy customer. So how are we making life easy for the employees, making it less complex? So that is what it's all boiling down to.
So help your employees have a happier experience with the use of some of these solutions which are out there. And let me come back to Arjun at this point in time. So Arjun, there is an added now requirement that COOs or CEOs have, which is in terms of fulfilling their ESG goals, which is environment, social governance. That's an added layer. How does operational excellence sort of tie in with that?
Yeah, that's a very important topic of discussion right now. And if you actually look at it, okay, the ecosystem actually needs to be evolved over a period of time. So if I take any organization today, they can actually say that I'm going to do 15 activities to ensure that the planet is all okay in terms of whether using electricity or fuel or whatever it might be, and the whole well-being of people, inclusion and diversity, all that forms with the people related pillar of the ESG related agenda. And then the entire social cost in terms of my activities, my operations, my company's objectives should have a social cost to it, so that that's something which all of us need to keep in mind. And then the whole governance aspect of it comes into play. Okay, that's how we are looking at it within KPMG, also globally also, and all of us are signed up to the global requirements. Currently also COP27, we talk about it. It really talks about it in a similar manner only. But what has happened is, while organization might try to do a lot of this stuff, the ecosystem also needs to evolve over a period of time, and that I think will take a bit of effort from all of us. Like if you take my procurement team, also needs to think about that, and my vendors also need to work in that kind of a manner. My internal operations need to work in that kind of a manner, and my customers also need to behave in that particular manner, because they also need to be aware that a delivery model which is catering to the ESG related objectives also is good from an overall point of view. So what has happened in the current system is the operational aspects are now taking more of a social and an environment related angle, and all of us the decision making is geared towards that. The internal decision making has changed in a manner that ESG matters are given priority. It's not as if it is not there, it is
Let me
not
come
done.
to, those are some great points, Arjun, that you've made. And let me come to Naozer here, because is there a bit of a conflict? Because as you said, cost is still there as part of a goal. And, ESG is seen as something perhaps that is not seen as revenue accretive, maybe not in the short run. Do you see that kind of conflict happening? And how important is really the leadership in companies to really take the onus on board of trying to fulfill both these goals, which is operational excellence aligned with ESG goals?
So I think there is enough research which has happened to suggest, that markets, investors, do reward companies who take ESG seriously in the long term. As you possibly alluding to, in the short term, yes, there could be some additional costs of compliance. But I don't believe that the two goals are hugely contradictory to sort of each other in the long run. I mean, of course, as an organization, Connect or even Quest Corp, does not have significant carbon emissions. I mean, that is one very, very headline way to sort of look at some of your ESG goals. Because we are in the services industry. But we do our bit in terms of how do we ensure that so we too, as a listed entity, or Quest as a listed entity, also has ESG goals, and is working towards it. But even otherwise, I think whatever we do, I don't see a challenge in terms of yes, as I said, in the short term it could be increased cost of compliance, but as long as so we have a model. In fact, we actually partner with a partner and help companies set up their ESG frameworks and their ESG reporting mechanism. So
Right.
I don't think there is any conflict at all.
Harsh Parekh, you've been fairly sort of frank about your own journey, and you've had some ups and downs, including when about when you approached the primary markets as well. But as you said, everything is a learning curve. How important is leadership in all of this when it comes to really driving a committed leadership in driving this entire mission of operational excellence in the context of digital transformation?
See, I think if any industry is going to look at it from a silo perspective, it won't work. It has to flow from top to bottom. And I think if we are able to communicate to every single stakeholder what are the benefits of it, right? I think the landscape in the country is changing, right? One simple example: just look at what UPI has done to payments. Now, the implication of that is for every single player in the industry. Suddenly, you're getting digital payments. But what does that mean is you need to evolve, and that is operationally much more better. But you will need to have a tech system which ensures reconciliation. All of that is completely done digitally. That's just one use case where we've seen the implications going great, right? So if the leadership is clear or that, I think a lot of apprehension comes from, oh, this technology is going to replace people. I don't think so that is the case. It makes life better for everyone. If someone is going out there doing a lot of physical work, technology is going to help him. And I think living and breathing it day in day out, just saying it for the sake of it, even for that matter on ESG, right? I think there are practical things to be done. Solar energy, electric bikes. I think for a lot of companies today, delivery or even transportation, it's quite, and the government is helping us enable that, right? So there are clearly, even a small organization or even a large unicorn like us can do so much out there if the leadership is aligned and it doesn't think, oh, this is one more burden for us. I think if it's clear that this is helping the end goal for us, like in our case, it's always been about solving the healthcare needs of the country, right? Now, whether it means I reach him digitally, I reach him offline, I go to a tier 2 village, I think if that focus is clear, the purpose is clear, you just need to keep communicating internally and be as transparent to everyone in the ecosystem.
Okay, so identify, as you said, the mission statement and the problem that you're looking to solve, and then work backwards and look at all the solutions which are there available, and they needn't be in conflict with each other, right? Samir, let me bring in your thoughts here, because one of the big lessons from the pandemic that I think all companies are learning to live, and we as a planet are learning to live, is learning to live with risk and a sudden overnight change in the environment as we know it. How does sort of operational excellence help in building that kind of required resilience in today's day and time?
Change, in my opinion, change management is the biggest challenge in improving efficiencies. And the changes which we have seen, whether it was the pandemic, people working from home, and now today we wanting everybody coming back to offices. Yes, we know the IT industry still has not seen enough people coming back to offices. I think the whole driving these changes is going to be the most important way to look at some of these changes is looking at the person who is affected. What is in it for her? Keep the person at the center and drive the change, and you will see wonders in the way she adapts to the change. I think that is the clear message which I would really say when you look at the changes which are happening. Looking at changes in different ways, effective governance, reducing the gaps in the change and implementation in all business processes would be very. Let me add a completely different point here, which you spoke about earlier also. See, when you look at what is happening, correct, we need to have pretty much periodic and proactive reviews of all the things which are happening and anticipate the changes. Identify maybe vintage policies, processes which we can implement, which we can eliminate. One example which comes to my mind, which is, if you remember about maybe 5-6 years back, the Modi government actually removed about 1,500 laws from this country, which were old archive vintage laws which were there, which were not required. It was not neither an organized, neither election mandate or asked by somebody. How do you look at some of these and proactively look at doing these things? This is where we can really bring a lot of efficiencies and change in the whole systems. And of course, all this requires constant communication with all the stakeholders.
Okay. So, and I think you just illustrated to us that, change is really a constant, and that's something, whether, the scale may vary, but it's something that all companies need to be agile and quick enough to respond to. And Akash, let me come back to you here in terms of how there has been a relook in terms of how organizations really evolve during these times. The traditional approach of project portfolio management has now been replaced by strategic portfolio management. Explain the difference to us, and how is it helping companies?
That's a great question, Paramita. So every change that you drive, right, it has to be managed, and everybody spoke about adoption. And the term that is most popularly used in the industry today is management of change. How we do the management of change, right? And then the execution of change. So traditionally, again, those kind of functions have been kind of executed in silos. So we have a separate team for resource management, separate solution for resource management, separate solution for a project management, the classic project management, where we actually identify tasks and dependencies, roles, and things like those. But it's just not that. When you say driving a change, driving innovation, it starts from idea. How do you capture the idea? Then how those ideas translate into demand, how those demand then translate into multiple projects, and how do you want to treat those projects. So whether you want to have a waterfall approach, or you want to have an agile approach, or an hybrid model, how do you want to execute it? Once you implement those things, how it finally reflects on your overall application portfolio of the organization. Applications are the enablers for all the business processes and services. So how basically it reflects on the application portfolio? What are the risks? Do we have the resources? Do we have the right parameters? So unfortunately, so far the organizations were not being able to look at all of this that I mentioned, right from idea to execution. They were not being able to look at it holistically. Now, for the first time, ServiceNow brings in strategic portfolio management. So strategic portfolio management basically covers everything from innovation management right up to the project execution. So any business function where they demand a change, it starts with an idea. How do you capture an idea? How do you collaborate on an idea? How do you then qualify that and convert that into a demand? From the demand, how do you put the team together? And then subsequently, how do you execute it? So strategic portfolio management goes beyond just a classic waterfall project management approach, but covers the entire life cycle of the change in an organization.
Right. And so clearly, this could really be the integrating factor to really perhaps break through the silos. Because Arjun, going forward, leave us with your thoughts and your learnings, both internally within KPMG and how the future looks. What are going to be those key priorities for organizations, and how should they really maneuver themselves and achieve the kind of operational excellence required in today's very demanding environment?
Yes, effectively, what I would really inform everybody is that the customer is the final pinnacle of how the organization needs to work. So our operations need to be, the advice would be, operations need to be geared towards what the customer needs so that we can meet the customer demands as early as possible. Customer satisfaction is critical, so operations need to kind of be geared towards that. At the same time, internally, when we are actually dealing with the whole program, it should not be too heavy on people. So, like we said earlier, we have to make tech easy for people. So, tech has to take over a lot of the stuff which currently is happening, and it has to be easy for people. So, that will be the second related advice I would give. And the third a piece of advice I would give is we have to plan and invest for the future. For example, in the past, traditionally we talked about business continuity plan, etc., and that really got tested in 2020 when all of us started working from home during the pandemic. Now that kind of an evaluation needs to happen, and now more so because the speed to the market is kind of changed right now. So we need to be faster to the market and faster to the customer. To that, the tech has to really help, and to that, operations has to really step up. So some of the traditional way of doing stuff has to change, and it has to kind of cater to what the customer needs, both internal and external. That would be my three pieces of advice to people who are wanting to build up their operations.
And that's a great list of to-dos that companies need to do today. Sameer Bendre, how would you like to add or change to that list? Because you mentioned in your earlier answer that really people have to be at the center of it all.
Yeah. So I would, when we say people at the center, it is very important because the human connection is going to play in our thing. While we can talk about digital data, everything, people have to be really put at the center. To me, first important is simplification of the processes, looking at how you can simplify the processes, empower the process owners, the owners who are going to do it, learn to be lean and nimble to the extent of saying that if something is not working, don't sort of sweat over it, but go about trying out new things. And wherever you look at digitization and automation of the processes, possible to reduce time, uh, cost, and effort in that order, and not just looking at just the people aspect, because people cutting costs is something which a lot of people focus on. But I think time should be something which should be looked at so that we can really use our people more effectively. And as people become more happy and they start delivering more, you will certainly get more effectiveness in all your processes what you love.
Interesting you say that. Nauzar, I'll come to you, and I'll also lay it out in the context of, worldwide, we are seeing some huge layoffs being announced. And when it comes to, reduction in costs, clearly people seem to be this, main target, at least including from American multinationals. What do you think should be the priorities for Indian companies? Would you define them a little differently?
So in terms of priorities, yes, I think there are a lot of new business models emerging, and Indian organizations are already embracing that, and with a view to sort of either reduce costs or enhance the talent pool here. So, I mean, particularly again post COVID, this whole piece of work from anywhere, and I'll just take that as one of the examples. Has really caught on. What that has done is it has opened up talent pools which hitherto were unavailable. It's reduced the space of the whole office infra, which sort of adds as a bit of icing on the cake. And lastly, hopefully it will, particularly in the kind of industry we are, or even otherwise, it will have a positive impact on work-life balance, on the ultimate impact on attrition. So that becomes a bit of a positive overall. Yeah. So I think the ability to in an agile manner, embrace change, and then be open to newer models. I think that's definitely high on the agenda. And the second piece I will say is, which is again in a sense linked to this, but the whole piece of enhanced, how to use enhanced RPA, enhanced AI, to run your existing models. I mean, so one is of course, I mean the process excellence, with the ops excellence which comes in, but how do you add that layer of digitization, automation, including, as I said, RPA and AI on top of that. I think that is going to be extremely critical, because that again will have a positive impact, whether you look at cost to serve, whether it's look at end customer experience, more self-service to end customers, and making those customer journeys easier. Yeah. So I think those are some of the things which you need to look at in terms of different operating models, enhanced digitization and RPA in existing models on top of it. And the last but not the least, the whole collaboration piece I think is becoming important. That also has a link to the first point which I made in terms of the newer employment models, because how do teams collaborate seamlessly across locations, across geographies, across time zones, so that the fact that everybody is not in an office space as they were earlier, becomes quite immaterial in that sense, or doesn't become
Right.
as important. So collaboration tools, so investment in collaboration tools, becomes extremely important.
Right. Some great points there. So investing more in automation, AI, collaboration tools as well. Harsha, as a business leader who will have to sort of lead from the front, and as well as focus on operational excellence, what are going to be those key levers that you'll be looking to move in this current market condition, and pieces of advice that you would have for other entrepreneurs?
I think being focused, because I think a lot of startups today, I think, as an entrepreneur, you try to solve every problem at hand. I think being razor sharp focused, a lot of, I'll give you our classic example. People say you're doing medicine delivery, why can't you do groceries? That's a different problem altogether. We can't do that. So I think being razor sharp focused in what is the problem you are solving. I think second, across for all businesses, I think, collaboration with a lot of other players. I think the world has changed. Maybe 10 years back, everyone felt that, why should I even work with someone else? Today, if I want a logistics, there are a bunch of great guys and great companies who are willing to collaborate, right? So I think someone spoke about collaboration internally, but I think collaboration with a lot of other players, including your competitors. And I think the third point is coexistence. A lot of, especially to new age companies, people say you are digital first or you are offline only, right? I think the world has moved towards coexistence. It doesn't mean that someone who's built a brick and mortar business is not great, and it doesn't mean that someone who's built a digital business is not great. I think that is the biggest change, when you realize that, yes, you can coexist. The market is big enough for all of us, especially in our country, the opportunity is huge, and you can coexist even with your competitors. It doesn't mean that you need to fight. I think that maturity, is coming, is really the key. So being focused, being collaborative with other ecosystem players, and coexisting even with competitors. I think those would be the top 3 takeaways.
Indeed, and that's putting a very new and different spin really on things, and that's coming from an entrepreneur himself. Final word to you, Akash. As you said, your job, or rather ServiceNow's job, is really to make life simpler for companies and to align and dissolve some of those silos. What pieces of advice would you give them in the current environment and going forward, especially for those who are laden with that kind of technical debt and really don't know where to start?
Absolutely, Parbita. I would like to, bring forth the point Samir made actually. It's about people, process, and technology. So you need to work on all 3. Only then you will be successful. And then the second part is, the adoption. Whatever the change that you are implementing, how well that gets adopted. So how you can make it easy for your employees, for your vendors, your partners, your customers to adopt the tech or the change that you are planning to implement. And everybody today is talking about digital workplace. So it's obvious today employees are expecting a consumer grade experience. Right now, on an average, as Gartner says, any individual today uses 5 to 7 mobile applications in a day, and they are hooked onto it. And nobody needs to train them. They easily know how to order food from Zomato, how to order a cab through an Uber or an Ola. And that is the kind of experience they are looking for when they work on internal systems. So if I have to raise a certain request in an organization, how is it? How easy it is to onboard an employee or offboard an employee? How easy it is to onboard or offboard a vendor or a customer? How easy I can service a customer? Okay, how I can connect my front office, mid office, and back office, and have a very collaborative single system of engagement. I think these are the key points which today the CIOs and the CTOs, CDOs are look. Of course, data security, ESG is all around it, but at the core are the workflows. How I can make those workflows smooth and very easy for employees to execute. I think those are the starting points. How I can make things easy for the employees. That's when truly the change will start happening.
No, but because there are no easy answers, there are no quick fixes. I think that's what we've learned along the way from all our esteemed panelists. That clearly, in today's day and age, one has to relook at the problem and really approach operational excellence through the lens of people, process, and the assets that you have by using those solutions which are available, having a committed leadership, collaboration, coexistence. These are some of the terms that we've heard today in the course of today's discussion, and it has been a huge learning because companies clearly need to rethink and readapt in order to be resilient in these times, and operational excellence is a key tool to enable that. Thank you so much for joining us on this very special discussion, and thank you to all our panelists as well for sharing their time and their thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Forbes India and ServiceNow present the COO Collective.